Welcome to Senior Living Marketing Perspectives. I'm Debbie Howard from Senior Living Smart, and today I am pleased to welcome Maureen Longoria, co-founder of LivNow Relocation. Maureen, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, I always like to hear people's founder stories, people who are entrepreneurs and want to serve the senior living industry and bring new, fresh ideas in to help the communities and help the families. Tell me a little bit about what brought you here with Live Now Relocation.
Yeah, thanks. I've always been a builder. I realize whatever role I've had, I love coming up with new services to meet an unmet need in the market, right? And I've done that throughout my whole career. When I was in my late 20s, I was actually asked to go and build a relocation management company for the largest North American agent. At the time, the van lines were realizing that they needed to keep their business to themselves and wanted to build relocation management companies. So at a young age, when I didn't understand what failure was yet, I dove in and we did do that. And it was really fun. We didn't just build a relocation management. We actually created a car hauling service so that people could get their cars shipped for relocation. We did household goods move management. We did a lot of things, but it was so much fun to be able to have the opportunity to listen to what clients needed and build something for them and then see them respond. So this isn't necessarily new to me, but I will say when myself and my co-founder, Lisa Burns, my vice president of operations, Kathy Frednall, our vice president of business development, Elaine Smith, we all dipped our toes into senior relocation a few years back, and we loved it. We absolutely loved it. But what we kept hearing was the seniors wanted and needed the support, but they needed to have that one point of contact to help them. And we recognized that they were more often than not leaning into the sales team for that. And we thought, you know what, we can do this. We can provide them with what they need and help the sales team at the same time. And it's just the most rewarding position I've ever had and throughout my career. And everybody on our team says the same thing. It's so nice to be able to take all of our experience and bring it to a market that is so grateful for what we're doing and needs it. So it's really a great way to end my career because hopefully this is my last job.
That's great. It really is such a complex move, and it's so much more personal than corporate relocation.
It is. You're right. There's, as I explain to people, there's three aspects that are so unique. One of them is they're usually downsizing. And there's a lot of memories and emotions that go along with this, right? It's usually their last move. They're downsizing. It's usually an uber local move. Sometimes they go across state lines. Sometimes they go across the country, but usually it's maybe within even a 5-mile radius, which makes it unique too. But the emotional aspect of it compounded with the downsizing and then the local, and oftentimes their kids are involved. If they moved before for a job or whatnot, their kids weren't involved in that. So that adds a different aspect as well. So it's a very unique move. And so you have to understand that. You have to understand your customer, the senior living community space, the senior themselves, and the adult children, really to provide an adequate solution. I think you could answer that better than me, but
yeah, no, it definitely is. It is such a complex. There's so many moving parts and pieces. And I went through this with my mom a couple of years ago, and it was an unexpected, very quick move and out of state. She was in Connecticut and I was in Massachusetts, and my brother and I were trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do all this? And he pretty much took all the logistical things that had to happen in Connecticut around, it's exhausting, yard sales and donations and emptying the house and finding the realtor. And then I was on the other end trying to get mom settled in and trying to get the movers and trying to make her much smaller space still hold all of those precious memories and favorite kind of touch points. But we were just absolutely exhausted from that move. And there wasn't anything like that I was aware of Live Now. And so we were just trying to figure it out on our own. And honestly, it caused a lot of tension. And conflict, and my mom feeling she wasn't being heard, and where's her stuff going, and who has it. And I know I listened to another podcast of yours, and I was really taken by, you had said, just take the stuff.
Oh,
Even
yes.
if you don't want the china, even if you don't want the crystal, even if you're not going to use it, just take it. Do
Mhm.
something with it later, but that whole emotional. So talk a little bit about what is that process and how does your team work with, you got the adult child that just needs to get it done,
Mhm.
right? And they're
Mhm.
maybe more process and linear and they have their checklists and they're just trying to handle the logistics side. But on the other hand, you have the older adult that's what's going to become of all my precious things and memories.
Yeah, great question. So we really have two different customers if when we're dealing with the adult child and the senior at the same time, right? And when we're working with the older adult that's moving into the community, we start with just having what we call a needs assessment, but it's really just asking what's got you the most concerned about the move, right? Our whole team has been trained in empathy and action for this reason, so that we can continue the same sort of beautiful consultative sales that you guys did at the community level to help them make that decision. Then all of a sudden we can't just ram this down. They're like, okay, we got to get moving now. We're going to have the movers are calling you tomorrow. So is the senior move manager. And so is the realtors. You can't do that. So we always just start by talking to them about what are your concerns? You're going to have to leave some things behind. What are your thoughts about that? And so we just start there with a conversation to hear what's going on with them, what's got them the most worried, what's maybe stopping them. Maybe they've been going to the community. We had someone just recently that keeps going but didn't move forward, and they just needed to know that there was somebody there that was going to hold their hand, right? But so that conversation looks very different than dealing with adult child. So with the senior, and we just bite off one thing at a time. Okay, so at the end of the call, so if I heard you correctly, we agreed that maybe the next step is you would like to talk to a realtor to get an idea of what your home is worth at this point in time, or you'd like to talk to a senior move manager who can come in and they're going to talk to you for an hour. They'll give you a free consultation to talk about how they can help you downsize to make this a reality. And they're going to help you determine what things you want to take with you and what might get repurposed and what maybe is of value and they can help you sell. So we really just start with a senior. That's more what the conversation looks like, really helping them feel seen and heard, so that they can feel validated and move forward. Then with the adult child, the conversation is more about, hey, we got the logistics. You can focus on mom and getting her settled in the community. We will give you all the information. We'll make sure you have good information to make good decisions. What we'll do the heavy lifting, you make all the decisions with your parent, right? So that's really the conversation with them is more about, we'll give you a list of movers. You can reach out. We've got 3 qualified movers. You don't have to worry. They've been thoroughly vetted. They're licensed, bonded, insured. They do background checks. Just knowing that they're going to have providers that have been thoroughly vetted and that will actually return their phone calls, they'll reach out to them, is just a huge help to both the older adult that's going into the senior living community, as well as their adult children, right? Because when somebody just gives them a list of providers and you can call these people, we've worked with them, they're like, okay, but are they any good? Are they going to give me a good deal? Are they going to return my phone call?
Right.
So those conversations tend to look very different in a lot of respects, but we work together with a lot of older adults to manage the whole transition themselves. Their kids aren't involved as well. So every situation is different. You know, that term snowflake that they used started using, but that's how every situation is. Everyone's unique. How quickly do they need to get into the community? Is this, they're going to get in right away? Oh, they put a deposit down, but the unit won't be ready for 90 days because they're renovating. Okay, we got to back into that time frame, right? Oh, we're working with an expansion and development. They're not moving for a year. So every situation is unique, and it always starts out with that needs assessment call to help them determine what's that next step, and knowing that we'll help them put a timeline in place and keep moving it forward. But we're doing all the heavy lifting and just putting them in a situation to make good decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of salespeople might be tempted to think about introducing you at the point that they get the deposit. But it sounds like the sooner you can get involved, it might be a way to overcome a barrier and accelerate the move, knowing that they have this support.
1000%. We just had a community a couple of weeks ago reach out to her dedicated relocation specialist at LivNow and say, hey, this prospect came in again. I know she wants to move into the community. She's excited, but she doesn't seem to be able to make a decision, and she hasn't made a deposit. Would you reach out to her?
Yeah.
And when that first phone call, she agreed to meet with the senior move manager to talk about organizing downsizing. The next week, she went and put her deposit down.
Yeah.
And met with the realtors, and she's moving into the community. So a lot of it is we're actually part of AARP's Age Tech Collaborative Accelerator program right now. And through this program, Debbie, they allowed us to do some surveying of a variety of groups of people. And we could determine what age range we wanted to survey. And then it would be a list of 15 questions we could ask. It has been hugely informative to us. And one of the surveys we put out there, we asked seniors that were considering moving into a senior living community, or people over 65 that were considering moving into a senior living community, and adult children between 50 and 65 that maybe had a parent that was looking to move into an adult or a senior living community, right? We asked them a bunch of questions, but one of them was, how valuable would a list of pre-vetted and qualified moving professionals like movers, realtors, professional organizers, senior move managers be to you? 92% said very or extremely valuable.
Yeah. Because it's overwhelming. You can't even imagine where to start or how to do it yourself. And there's so many solo agers right now that's becoming more and more of a demographic. And even those older adults that have adult children, they're working and they're busy and they don't want to bother them and they can't spend every weekend. So it's just that additional layer of support and kind of confidence. I can do this. Someone's going to help me. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, was really how to use these types of services as a differentiator within your marketing positioning. Because so often there'll be 5 or 6 senior living communities, and when you tour, guess what? They all have the best dining, the best activities, the best this, the wonderful care, and they're all beautiful, and they all, from a services and amenities standpoint, can look very similar. And then if you don't have any differentiators, it really just comes down to price. And that is not a battle that anyone wants to be in. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the best practices to really have a comprehensive marketing strategy around how these services would differentiate you from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, great question. Our more progressive clients are using us during the sales stage, like you said, for sure. But the ones that are getting the most traction have us on their website and are using us. We're doing presentations at all our communities. We do presentations a lot. We do webinars. We'll try to do even more creative webinars. We're doing one about a digital vaults. Okay, maybe you're not ready to move into the community this year, but let's talk about digitizing your documents so it makes it super easy for you. Let's start somewhere. So we're doing lots of creative things like that. But the website part of it, having our clients put us on their website, because Debbie, those adult children aren't walking into the communities, but you can be assured they're looking at these websites. I have a friend of mine who just moved her parents into an assisted living community. And she said, if I would have seen your services on any one, she looked at 5 different communities, one of their websites, that would have spoke volumes to me about how they were going to care for my parents once they got there. She said, at the time, my services had just started and she didn't know that we were doing this. And she said, I spent all my time in my parents' home dealing with their stuff instead of getting them settled in the community. I called 5 movers. Nobody returned my phone call. So by putting it on the website so that the adult children and the prospective resident know that you're going to support them with that, I think that makes a big difference for sure. If you're going to offer the services, put them on the website. But also, like I said, doing these seminars, we'll do a seminar, how to sell your home in 2023. Not necessarily a real estate market update, we'll add that in, but really what's changed, because a lot has changed. And a lot of seniors are concerned about selling their home because of HGTV. I'll probably have to do all this work on my home. And that's where we're like, no, you don't. And so to your point, it's putting our services on their website. So immediately they know that the community is going to support that transition, doing these sort of webinars and presentations to help them become aware. We have a whole plethora of articles, 2 great articles that we give our clients access to. Send them an article. If they mentioned something that's concerning to them, grab one of our articles and send it to them. You can use our testimonials. What did someone else that moved into the community? We've done interviews with people that have moved into the community. Use your ambassadors. Certainly, if someone used our service, I know that those panel experts, the ambassadors within the community, those are the most popular presentations that they have. So make
Right.
sure that somebody is on there talking about that made the transition super easy. Don't stress about that. I've given presentations at expansions, and when I ask how their stress level is about the idea of moving, it's like up here, and
Yeah.
presentation, like, okay, it's down here. I think that people forget just how stressful that is for them. So anything that we can do to help the community promote the fact that they're going to support them with this, we're all about doing. Recently, we started sending some emails to people in the CRM and saying, to your point about moving on, like from I'm not ready to, okay, let's talk to the LivNow, this group that you're partnering with. So we're working with the CRM at one of our more progressive communities, and 10 emails will go out on a weekly basis. Hey, just wanted to introduce you to our new partner that we have, that when the time is right for you, they'll help you with that transition. If you'd like to speak to them today, things like that are more progressive are really making a big difference.
Yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, definitely having a dedicated page under your resources section. We recommend everybody have a resources section in their top navigation, not in the footer, not in the secondary navigation.
Yep.
People are looking for resources. And so when they get to your website, they want to find that with drop downs for blogs, for news, for events, for videos, and then having that dedicated page, which would have all the information plus some video testimonials, things that would engage people. If all things are equal, and I've got 5 or 6 communities to look at, and they're all priced about the same, and they all have wonderful amenities, what's it going to come down to? It's going to come down to what's going to be the most seamless, the least amount of friction, the least amount of stress to making this a really great experience for me and my family. So I definitely recommend that. And then we do a lot with marketing automation. And so we don't want to count on the sales team being the one that has to remember to make those introductions, because there's turnover at the sales level. And maybe because they're local, they might be like, oh, they're fine, they're all local, I'm sure they don't need this kind of service. There can be like certain assumptions or busyness that get in the way of people, of the sales team remembering to connect prospects to some of these services that we've found. And so we think, let's just set up a rule in the CRM to create a trigger so that the automation happens just based on a change of stage. So when somebody hits post tour, the sales team doesn't have to do anything. We just set a rule in the CRM to then connect over to our marketing automation platform to set up a cadence of emails that goes out. And one might talk about tips to selling your home. And oh, by the way, we have fully vetted real estate agents in your market that can give you an evaluation and help you with that. Oh, moving tips and tricks. Here are some places. We don't throw away your wonderful things. We do repurpose, we do donate. We have local organizations who are so grateful to accept all of your wonderful, cherished possessions that you just can't bring with you. I think from a marketing perspective, even seeing some of those things on social media, the more you can reinforce the value of that, I think the more you can set yourself apart from competitors.
I couldn't agree more. Those CRMs can be so powerful to get the word out. It can just be, hey, they take a tour, they get an email. Hey, thanks for touring. We just want to introduce you to our partner that would manage your transition. If you choose to move into our community, they can support you with all of these things. So part of that surveying I mentioned to you that we did it through our Age Tech Collaborative Accelerator program. One of the other questions we asked is, what do you need the most help with? And this was specifically asked to older adults, 65 plus, that were considering a move into a senior living community. The number one thing was the physical aspect of moving. I was just pulling it up. The number 2 thing was finding the right community. They were very concerned about that. But the number 3 thing was organizing, downsizing. Number 4 was selling the home. And then number 5 was just financial. To your point, tell them up front, you're going to provide them with the support that they need. Don't worry. Don't let this be the stressor for you. You're going to have the support that you need. So don't let this stop you from moving in, because that's what we used to hear. We would go to these events and we would hear the seniors say, but Oh, honey, it's so much. I've got a lot of stuff. I don't want to bother my adult children. That's a big part of it. They
Yeah.
know that they can't do without the support of their adult children. They don't want to lean into them and bother them because they're busy. They're overwhelmed.
And this is a free service to the prospect. So the other part of it, I'm sure
Yes.
financially, is that this doesn't cost them anything. This is 100% value add. That is, your compensation comes from other channels. I know probably part of that is a flat fee to the communities, but that's probably the minority of it. The majority of it comes from other channels. But for the prospect, this is just free service and reassurance and someone to hold their hand, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and someone to actually negotiate better deals for them, because with our volume, we can get better deals for them, and we can negotiate things out of real estate contracts like marketing fees, admin fees, cancellation fees to save them money. Somebody that's looking out for them. They get an estimate from a moving man and they're like, it seems a little high. We'll review that and we'll make sure. And then we'll say, we'll get a second estimate. So let's compare. So to your point, yes, but our services are completely free to them.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And just a comment on the CRM and email. CRMs can do a one-shot email, but if you really want to reinforce, marketing automation can do a cadence of emails with a certain amount of touch points per day, and can even segment whether somebody clicks or not, like the journey that they take. The CRM is a good thing for a one-off communication. Marketing automation really is the secret sauce for multiple touch points to reinforce, and multiple CTAs to set up, to click, to schedule that appointment, or to be connected to you, because the salespeople are busy and they're not always going to have the time to facilitate that. So we want to automate and empower the prospects and their adult children to be able to directly connect with you instead of always going through the sales team.
1,000%. 1,000%. I would love to see more communities doing that, using the power of that, because I think, to your point, it's super powerful.
Yeah, yep, it is. The other thing is we look at 3 stages in the prospect journey. We call them the 3 W's. Prospects spend most of their time in the weather stage. And in the weather stage, they want to remain anonymous. And frankly, they don't care about your brand. They're just trying to figure out whether I should move mom in this fall, or whether she wants to have one more holiday at home, or whether she can do the 1 bedroom, or whether does she really need that 2 bedroom, whether she should move closer to me or my sister, whether she has to sell the home before she moves, or there's just a million of whether this, whether that, whether we should get home care, and in that phase, they are on the website. They are researching 100% independently. They're expecting a lot of transparency and a lot of resource information. Then they go to the where stage. Okay, now I've figured out all the weather stuff. Now I know I'm going to move mom in before the holidays and it's going to be near me. And now I have to figure out the where stage. And now they're looking at communities and they're touring. And so having that differentiator of, oh, this community is going to help me with all these transitional stresses that I just don't have the time or the expertise to deal with. I want to focus on mom or dad's transition. And then the last stage is the when stage, when to move. And that's where people get stuck. And you know that today is better than tomorrow. And also from a sales perspective, you need the revenue on that apartment this month more than next month. And so I do think that having you in their back pocket can really accelerate the when stage of the move, because we don't have to have a lot of those barriers of waiting and scheduling and all of those things. I think you have a unique value proposition in the weather stage, in the where stage, and in the when stage.
Yeah, I agree. We recently had a situation where we were introduced to a gentleman and his wife that were going to be moving, and he let our dedicated relocation specialist know. He said, I really need a 2 bedroom. He goes, I really want to move into this community. We love it. And we want to, but I don't think I'm going to be able to afford their 2 bedroom. He said, so I'm going to start looking at other communities. And she said, with your permission, can I go back to the sales counselor and let her know that they're concerned about that and that's a possibility? And he said, yes, of course. So she did. And no lie, Debbie, the next day, our dedicated relocation specialist got a call from this gentleman, and he said, he started crying. He's, you're my angel. Because the community, by having that information, was able to find him the 2 bedroom at the price that he could afford to be in there and close the deal. But you know why he didn't go back to the sales counselor and say that, probably because he just didn't think they could do anything. You just never know. Yeah, we can help in those various stages throughout the process by having that partnership and that communication. Yeah, to your point, it's never too early to introduce us, or at least start giving them good information about what it means to move.
And are there any differences either between kind of the life plan, not-for-profit type of prospect or type of relocation versus maybe the rental side of the industry? Do you notice any differences in the prospect or in the process?
We do, for sure, because usually in the life plan, they're going to use the equity from their home for the entrance fee. And so that becomes a really big deal. And sometimes that equity is what allows them to qualify. And if that equity is not there, they're not going to qualify. More often than not, in a life plan, they're going to sell their home before they move in. Some of them do move in and then sell their home, but usually they're going to sell their home and then move in. And so then it's the timing issue, right? Like I said,
Right.
and a lot of communities are doing renovations. So they're like, okay, they deposited, but they're 90 days out. Or we're working with wait lists. So we even work with the wait list people to get them ready so that when the unit comes available, then we've already done all the legwork. What realtor you're going to list your home with. You have a good idea. So maybe you should update your CMAs, which mover you want to work with or senior move manager, right? We've already organized a lot of downsizing and stuff like this. So anyway, but yeah, so that's how that looks for that. Now the rental, to your point, it's different because a lot of times they don't sell their home before they move in. And because they're like, well, I want to test it. What if I don't like it? Which is not the best way to go into that community with that sort of mentality, right? A lot of them do sell it, but a lot of them don't have to. And so that looks very different. And I think that they're prepared to be organized and downsized based on all the survey we've been doing. They recognize that's one of the reasons they're moving, especially in a 55 plus community. They're ready to downsize into something and have a different lifestyle and not have to worry about keeping up their homes. That's huge. It's huge value. But yes, to your point, it can look different in those situations. And it depends then on what their thinking is. Was this, I'm sure of this move and yeah, I'm ready? Or is it, I'm going to test this out. It sounds like it'll be great, but I'm going to sell my home after I see what it's like.
That's great. I'm sure it's a little bit different. Like you said, snowflakes, every one of those conversations is probably a little bit different based on a variety of, is it the adult son? Is it the adult daughter? Is it the older adult yourself? Is it different for a single senior versus a couple moving in together? It feels like there must be so many dynamics for you and your team to navigate.
There are, you're absolutely right. And to your point, you mentioned earlier about the amount aging solo. The amount of people aging solo will quadruple in the next 10 years to over 8 million.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's going to be a new draw for senior living communities. You already see it when the spouse passes. That's a lot of times when they move into the community. Somebody's aging solo. A senior living community is a great place for them to be, for the socialization, for the care, for all of the wonderful things that it affords them. So I think senior living communities will be even in more demand as you see that generation come about in that solo situation. And then they too will need support to get to the community. That will be one of the things that they'll be concerned about. How am I supposed to do this by myself?
Yeah.
The dynamics are so interesting, aren't they? It's really fascinating. And so they say that relocation is the third most stressful event of your life. Now, this relocation has to be the most stressful relocation, period. And then add to that, as you have a lot of times they lost a spouse. And that's what brought about this move. They're like, okay, I'm going to make this move now because they just lost their spouse. I talked to someone last week. I was down in Florida at a community, and that woman, she was an ambassador, and she said, I wish I would have made this move before my husband got sick. So he could have enjoyed this. We could have been, and more importantly, he could have had that support at the community. The community would have wrapped around them and supported them instead of it was at home. And then she moved into the community. That's what she shares with the prospects when they come. Yeah, it's really, you and I could keep going on for days about the dynamics involved in this. And that's why it's like providing support is just like a no-brainer, you know?
Yeah, obviously, it's like the more you can do to help. How do you make this the easiest decision in the toughest time?
Yes, exactly. And that's by just doing all the heavy lifting for them so that they can just make the decision and make good decisions for themselves. The other thing is My husband was just telling me, so he works with a lot of people that eventually move into senior living communities. And he had a gentleman that he was working with and was wheelchair bound and made the move himself into assisted living. His kids weren't available to help him. And my husband said he hasn't been the same since then. He goes, I think he was literally saying this the other night at the kitchen table, because I think all the stress of the moving. I'm like, do you not know what I do?
You could have helped.
Well, and I think, I don't know if I can help, like, it's a different, but I'm like, yes, this is why we do what we do, because it's so stressful for them. And he goes, yeah, he hasn't been the same since then. Hello.
Do you
Poor
get a
guy.
lot of pushback around just the perception of space? Like, I'm going from this 4-bedroom house into this small space? Because I feel like with my mom, it was more of a perception than reality. Yes, she did have a large 4-bedroom home, but honestly, her whole world had gotten so small, she didn't use any of those other 3 bedrooms or space, and she was pretty much living in her room with her tray table and her computer and her sewing machine, and she laughed about it being her assisted living room anyway. But do you feel like it's more of a perception when you actually get into these conversations with these older adults trying to make these moves? And how do you deal with that? Because I feel like that's always a barrier. They look at the closet and say, I can't possibly move here. Where is all my stuff going to go?
Yeah, it's huge. And that's where I really feel for the sales team overcoming that. I'm sure they hear that obstacle every day, all day long.
Right.
That community I was at last week in Florida, there was a woman who had lost her spouse 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to her, and she was perfect to move into this community. Like, she needs to do that. You can see the sadness and the loneliness in her. It breaks my heart, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to her, and I said, what's holding you back? And she said, oh, I have a big house. It's exactly what you just said. And Debbie, if it hadn't been just 4 months, I would have said, how many rooms are you really using in that house? Where are you living in the house? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the sort of community she could have gone into a villa too, or a 2-bedroom. It wasn't just small unit. She wasn't ready for assisted, so she wasn't getting into a tiny. But you know what? It was too early. She had just lost her husband, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to listen.
Yeah.
At that point. But yes, that's usually the biggest barrier, and that's when they start to realize that it's too much for them to keep all this up, and they're not getting the socialization. That's when they have to realize the trade-off is a lifestyle, a better lifestyle for themselves, a better being for themselves, all of that. And that hurdle is hard. And we come across it, but I know the sales teams, that is the biggest struggle.
Yeah, I feel like I think the hardest thing to overcome is really perceptions, because the perceptions are a lot of times more about who they were when they were younger. And so I would do home visits when I was doing sales in a community, and people would say, they come into tour and say, there's not a full kitchen here. There's only the kitchenette. Of course, all the meals are provided and everything, but it would be the perception of, I'm a cook and I'm an entertainer. And you'd go and do these home visits, and you know what, I would always bring them a meal from the kitchen, and I would open up the fridge to put the meal in for them to enjoy later. And there was nothing in the fridge.
I know, right? I
This,
know.
this person was clearly not cooking, but the perception of, I am a cook, I love to cook, I am an entertainer, and yet the reality of how they were living, it was just a perception. But I feel like the perception of space, the perception of, I have to have a full kitchen, when you really go into their homes and sit with them and talk to them,
Yeah.
the way they're living is actually not living up to their perception.
And that is I think a whole different situation. And that's where these sales teams at these senior living communities are absolutely amazing. We don't touch on that hurdle as much as just the hurdle of, how am I supposed to do this? How do I get from here? That sort of thing. When is in their own mind, they have a perception of themselves as one thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's hard. That's really hard stuff.
Yeah.
I get that. I totally get that. Up until my son left for college, my last one left for college last year. Oh my gosh, maybe it was 2 years ago now. It was just when I started the company. I was ready to get out of this house.
Yeah.
For 25 years, I'm like, I'm getting a different house. And now I'm like, why would I leave here? It's like the turn now, like, I raised my kids here. I can't leave. It was easy to leave when they were with me, and leaving now. So that's hard stuff. That's really emotional.
It is.
Where the senior living industry does an amazing job of training sales teams to
Yeah.
be empathetic.
Yeah, I know. And
Right?
it really is just, it's supporting the perception and helping them understand that they can realize it in a different way. And so those folks that would be in that place was always being able to bring recipes with them that the chef would then be able to use their recipes to cook, or it would be that they would do a cooking class and we bring the activity director in to allow them to really
Oh,
support
lovely.
and so when it was always something that would only last a month or two.
Mhm.
And then they settled into the routine of the community, and then they didn't have to hang on to that perception anymore. And it was kind of like,
Totally.
I don't want to do a cooking class. I just want to go to the dining room.
Totally, but it was that hurdle that you overcame to get them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot. It's very emotional, and I'm so glad that your company exists and that you have trained folks that can support the communities and helping their prospects make a successful and stress-free transition. If people want to get hold of you, Maureen, what's the best way for them to get in contact? And we'll also include all your information in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. It's just LivNowRelocation.com, LivNow relocation.com is you can reach us, or Longoria at LivNow Relocation. You can reach us, or on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. You can reach us in any of those ways as well.
You got all your marketing boxes checked. I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
Thanks. I think we do an okay job on LinkedIn, but we're not so good on Facebook and Instagram. We need someone like you to help us. Let me tell you.
Thanks for sharing your senior living marketing perspectives with us, Maureen. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, Debbie, I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.